So just because brains are, the kinds of brains that we have are useful to us, it doesn't mean that they will be useful to a cockroach. We have nothing to do with it. It's too much for us. Okay? And just to take away from this idea that evolution has a direction, imagine this. This is the creative part of the talk for you. Yeah. Imagine that there is a similar planet to Earth around some star that is very similar to the sun. So it has about the same size of the Earth, about the same mass of the Earth, about the same amount of water, a similar atmosphere, everything is the same. Would you expect the same sorts of species, the same species actually, to evolve there as they have on Earth? Well, no, except maybe for bacteria. Why? Because multicellular organisms have an almost infinite way in which they could possibly evolve. So, for just something that may happen in the Earth and didn't happen in the other planet. At some point, you know, the continental masses move all the time, islands move and so on. We have tectonic plates, and the same will happen in a planet that is very similar to Earth, but it's not going to happen exactly the same way. So in one particular planet, some big islands come together to form a much larger landmass. And so what happens then, you can have animals who are very large and they have to go big distances. Elephants have to keep moving, by the way. And the reason is otherwise they'll get very sick. They dump these huge things on the ground after they eat, and bacteria take care of them. But it takes them a long time. So the elephants have to be somewhere else when they get the next meal, and so on. Well, these big islands will make it possible for big animals to evolve. But it doesn't have to happen in every place. There could be another planet in which such land forms do not come about. Okay. The Avebury asteroid, you've probably heard of this, hit the Earth. It's about 12 kilometers across of the province of Yucatan, of the peninsula of Yucatan in Mexico, and wiped out most of the species on Earth 65 million years ago. Most importantly for us, it wiped out the dinosaurs. They became extinct shortly afterwards, you know, I mean a couple of thousand years or so afterwards. That meant that mammals, which at that time were nocturnal, well, they did not like that I was going to say that mammals were just vermin. You know, they were just rat-like creatures hiding at night. Dinosaurs ruled the earth, you probably heard that. Well, but now mammals, and birds actually, which came from dinosaurs, could move into all those niches that the dinosaurs previously occupied. And what did they do? Well, they grew into all kinds of animals. Some of them very large ones, like elephants, and humans, see. So, there have been other massive extinctions that also radically affect life. You cannot guarantee by any means that another planet that is very similar to the Earth will have that kind of evolution at all. So it's extremely unlikely, almost impossible, that they will have the same species as we do. The number of such contingencies is just almost infinite. That means evolution depends on chance. There, it depends on chance also in the way in which mutations are produced. And one last subject that I'm going to deal with, genes and traits. Just because you have, or some animals in a population have certain genes, doesn't guarantee that they're going to be successful, because those genes have to be expressed as traits. So what genes give us, and by the way, sometimes you require the whole combination of genes to produce anything, but what genes give us are really tendencies. For example, we may be born with a tendency to be tall, because we inherit our dad's genes and he was very tall. Okay. Well, as long as you don't deal with malnutrition, if they don't feed you, you may end up not being very tall at all, or all sorts of diseases that could affect you, that could stunt your growth. See, and development is crucial. So suppose a mother has a very good brain, the father has a very good brain, but when the mother is pregnant, she's drinking, or smoking marijuana. So there is a very high chance that the kid is not going to be normal. He's not going to have, he could be schizophrenic, autistic, who knows what, because the brain development is going to be affected within the mother's womb. So it's extremely important. Also medicine, or the mother got sick, any of those things in development. And by development, it's not only within during the embryonic stages, but even later. Let me give you an example. What is the most common, most basic instinct, you might say, that animals have? To mate, I would say, is definitely one of those, right? So, rats. The mother rat produces a litter of rats. And then what does she do after the little ones are in front of her? Well, she smells them and she licks the genital area of the male ones. Apparently, this increases the testosterone that comes to the testes. And if she doesn't do that, and they made sure that in one experiment, the mother didn't do that because they cut off her olfactory nerve and she couldn't smell them, so she wouldn't lick them. So what happens? These rats, these male rats, later did not ever try to mount females. They just didn't have it. Monkeys. Monkeys play with each other. That's about 6 months old or so. This particular species of monkeys, apart from play fighting, they're not really fighting, they're play fighting. They also have play sex, but this is just the males. They actually don't have any sex at all. They just, the one monkey will jump on the back legs of another monkey and makes these motions. It's not that there's really any kind of sexual activity at all, but they sort of play act something that when they're later adults they will do. Now, if one of those monkeys is raised in isolation, so it doesn't have other little monkeys to play with, he will never do that. And if he doesn't ever do that, what is going to happen? Well, he will never try to mount a female later in life. This is how important development is. This play act actually triggers things in the brain, hormones and so on, that in fact produce certain developments. So the monkey will be actually instinctively trying to do that when he is older. Does it happen with humans too? Well, not exactly as monkeys, we don't play that way. But for example, if you don't have the right hormones at the right time, you could also affect such things as the attraction towards females. So they have, well, there is males, human males, have in the hypothalamus a very small nuclei. And this nuclei is actually very important. It grows to be of a certain size. But if he doesn't get the right hormones at the right time in development, even if you have the perfect genes, but doesn't have the right hormones at the right time because the mother got sick or who knows what, then this little set of nuclei is not going to grow. And if not very much. And if it doesn't grow as much as it's supposed to, these males will grow up to be homosexuals. Most of them. I mean, this sort of thing happens all the time. So I wanted to tell you about how complicated this whole thing about evolution is and why it works and what evidence we have for it. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of all of that. Yeah, I should stop now. Oh, I would, if you want to know more about all the stuff that has to do with what I just spoke about homosexuality and so on, it's in this book of mine, Sex, Reproduction, and Darwinism. It has actually articles by some 12 people, and mine is one of them. I was the one who edited. And if you want to see how to use evolution to think about all kinds of subjects, including the natural science, then there is another book of mine called Evolution and the Naked Truth, amongst the books that were mentioned earlier. And if you hate to read serious essays and prefer to read fiction, then you could get my novel, Alex in Femiland. In chapter 2, there is a description of a seminar on Darwin and how shocking it is. Not to religious people, but to students who are all, how should I say, leftist, politically correct people. And so Darwin actually is a big shock to them. As one of them says, who is an environmentalist. Environmentalists believe in things like the balance of nature and things like that, which is complete crap, you know. And then it's a shock. He says, well, this is going to be really bad for my politics. What am I going to do, you know? Yeah.